Hello, I'm horceror. I want to find out what makes every single killer tick. There's one big glaring issue with that though. I play the Nemesis, essentially only the Nemesis. I physically cannot get thousands of hours of experience on every single character. So, I'm going to be interviewing people that do have those thousands of hours. One for every single killer. Welcome to Stars of the Fog. Alright, hello, and welcome back to another episode of Stars of the Fog. This episode's been a long time coming, but now we're here. Today we're going to be covering the Singularity, the biopod boy, the anti-organic, and my guest today, Jera, is a very passionate Singularity player, and rather than try to sell you on them, I'm just going to kind of let them introduce themselves, because obviously they're going to know who they are better than I do. So, Jera, who are you? What are you known for? And why Singularity?
Hey, Arthur, and real quickly, I would just like to say thank you so much for putting me on your show for today. So I'm obviously known for Singularity. I've been maining Singularity for a decent amount of time as well. I've recently started doing YouTube videos basically explaining how to play as and against Singularity and stuff, because Singularity himself is a very misunderstood killer. I mean, he's obviously going to be one of those killers that will absolutely roll you if you're in a solo queue lobby or something like that, but I'm hoping that by today that I can help clarify some questions and maybe answer some other questions as well regarding this killer as well.
Of course, so you want to teach people about Singu, you are kind of looking to explain things that maybe might not be as understood about the character.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing with this killer, though, is there's not really a lot of guides that basically explain like how this killer works. Is he's actually a very mechanically complicated killer, which I think is why he's one of the most annoying or frustrating killers to go against.
Because he's not as straightforward as hold W, drop pallet, teabag the pig.
Exactly.
So what was like the thing that made you get into Singularity? Like, did you ever play Survivor first, or were you a straight killer player? And just like, when did Singularity become like the, okay, this is my guy?
Yeah, so I actually used to be a Survivor main for a decent amount of time, and then I switched to Killer. And when I did switch to Killer, it was between Hillbilly and Wesker, mostly Wesker. And I really enjoyed playing Wesker, but I'm also very competitive, and I got frustrated losing to teams that just had better perks than I did and maps. And so I wanted to play a killer that nobody really understood. I wanted to get better at a killer that nobody really played. And so I looked at Singularity himself, and I thought, I'm going to give him a go. And so like the first couple of times I started playing Singularity, I was kind of getting destroyed and all like the usual, as you're learning a new killer. And I kind of realized, man, this killer is actually a lot better than people think he is. So I started playing him over and over and over. Eventually I got pretty damn good at him. And now, I mean, it's very rare that I get outed. And it's mostly because people don't really understand how to play against this killer. And I see a lot of people make mistakes against this killer, like really, really basic mistakes, but people don't really catch on as like how they're making these mistakes.
And what would you say is like the main mistake that survivors make? Like, is there one specific thing that people are doing that you're like, okay, this is like why you're losing?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of things I can say, but I would say the most basic thing that I see is that people just don't drop enough pallets, because the big thing with Singularity is people don't really understand like how his teleport works. Like, it sounds very self-explanatory, like he just teleports onto you, but it's actually a lot more mechanical than that. So a lot of people, when they go to pallets, like, I mean, they could go to the safest pallet on planet Earth, and they'll just sit there. And what happens is when people sit at a pallet, when I teleport on top of you, or when I teleport to you, I will teleport directly on top of you. So if you try to go for another loop, I'm going to be able to hit you. And if you drop the pallet, it's going to immediately break. I'm still going to get a hit. So when you get to a pallet, you just need to immediately be dropping the pallet.
And is that the major misconception that people have against Singularity, or what don't people understand? Like, if there's one big thing, is it just the don't drop the pallet, or is there like some specific interaction that they're missing?
Yeah, well, because you need a bit of good judgment when you do get in a chase with Singularity, because when you get to a pallet, you either have to immediately drop the pallet and then force him to teleport onto you, so that way it breaks the pallet. Like, if you're standing like right next to the pallet after you drop it, if I teleport directly on top of you, it's just I'm going to teleport directly on top of the pallet, so then it immediately breaks. So if you don't have like a window or another pallet to chain to, you need to immediately drop the pallet.
Okay, so he is kind of a pre-drop killer. Gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of got the same principle as like a blight. Against a good blight, like, you're not going to be able to get like a decent amount of loops. You're going to have to drop certain tiles, and like Cloud Lake, you're going to have to drop like almost every single pallet against this guy, unless you have like a really good window right next to you. But
yeah, makes sense. And that's kind of like, I would say that's something that's pretty frustrating about the killer, is that, like, you can't really greed as much.
Exactly.
He can't be stunned after he teleports, so it's kind of something that you take away from the average loop experience, I guess, which is, I would say, a little bit frustrating when the average killer, you can just greet the pallet 4 times around and then drop it because they have no way of injuring you. Would you say that the most frustrating part about Singularity is his inability to play the normal way, or do you think that's something that's more like interesting when it comes to the survivor-sided gameplay?
Well, I think with Singularity, I would say there's 3 different ways where you can play Singularity. I mean, probably like absolutely the number one worst playstyle is a 3-gen Singularity, where people just absolutely refuse to pressure any other gens besides like the closest 3-gens. That I understand is extremely frustrating. He's really good at 3-genning, but honestly, like I would probably say, yeah, he's a really difficult killer to loop, and especially against a good Singularity, it can be pretty frustrating. Singularity is also very map dependent as well. If you don't have a lot of pallets, like you're probably going to lose. I have beat some extremely good teams, especially like in the comp scene, but I 4K them at high gens because they just don't really have a lot of pallets. Like I went against, I'm not going to name exactly which team it was, but they played for top teams, and I got them on Thompson House, but it wasn't really like the greatest RNG. But they popped 1 gen against me, and these guys have like all this comp experience. I'm like, man, how did I beat these guys so badly? Like, oh yeah, they didn't have this pallet. There's just a lack of resources. Resources is very important against Singularity.
So sometimes when you load in, there is just like nothing you can do. Like if I load into Haddonfield, then there's like a pallet in the middle of the road, and that's it. Like I'm just cooked.
Yeah, well, Haddonfield, yeah, it really just comes down to RNG, but against like a good Singularity should never lose on Haddonfield. I have never been outed before on Haddonfield, and especially I've gone against some really good teams too, and not a single one of them has been close to popping more than 3 gens against me on Haddonfield. And it's like with Singularity as well, you have to also like really, one of the big things I tell the people is you have to prioritize which gens you defend. So certain maps like are really good, really bad, but you have to really prioritize like which gen to defend, because there's some gens that are just so hard to defend, like especially like on Badham, like the gen like below one of the houses, like in the basement, and especially the main building. Those 2 gens are extremely hard to defend because not only like I have to place a biopod really close in order to defend the gen, but survivors can also just EMP the camera without any repercussions. So, and if I decide to take a chase there, I mean, a good survivor should be able to loop me at those areas for longer than 30 seconds. And from there, it's just like you're just going to lose.
Yeah, so you have to pick your chases, and that's how you end up, not getting outed on these types of maps. So with all the talk of like your comp experience and, average gameplay not being outed just because of how survivors like don't really know how Singularity works, I assume you've done some kind of win streak at some point, and just like how do you really feel about win streaking on the Singularity? Have you done a win streak, and do you feel like comparatively to every other killer in the game, it's easy as a thing to do on Singu?
Yeah, I think Singularity has a lot of potential because he is a killer that will absolutely stomp pretty much any good team like on a map that slightly favors the Singularity as well. And in terms of builds as well, I mean, most Singularities are going to run a lot of regression plus like rapid brutality because you can stack the 5% plus the extra 3% overclock speed, and you can basically just close in distance so much faster compared to if you weren't running rapid. But really it just comes down to the map, because like any decent team, if you play them on like Larry's, Hawking's, Midwich, those are win streak killers right there. Those maps right there. Almost any map there, like you should probably be losing as a Singularity. What I'm coming at here is it really just comes down to like, I would say like in terms of like map luck, because you can win almost 99% of your matches, but there will be that one team eventually that you get that are running good perks, and it's a map that's pretty difficult for you. I mean, you should probably be getting 2 out of at least. So one of my friends, he holds the record for the 4K streak, but I never wanted to like try and beat that record because I mean, he's a friend of mine. I don't want to take his name off the board potentially. Plus realistically, I don't really have the time to do that. But I have attempted the 4K streak for no loadout, which I was 1 win away from getting the record, and then I lost on Cold Tower against a good team running shoulder. Just perks like that in general is like, even if you have like a good map and all, like just certain perks like shoulder, and then top of that, people are stacking like anti-tunnel perks like DS, OTR, Dead Hard. Those perks are extremely hard to deal with because Singularity, like he isn't like a Blight where he can do 3 backflips and still get a hit at a pallet, or a Nurse where he can just teleport through a wall. He still has to go through a pallet. He still has the vault windows. Like he has to like close in distance. So that's really what separates him from being an S tier, is he doesn't have like an ability to insta down, or he doesn't have an ability to do some like triple backflip tech to get a hit.
Yeah, okay. So would you say there's a specific perk that's like anti-Singularity, or is it just kind of like the basic stuff that's anti-tunnel, anti-slug, anti-whatever.
Yeah, I would say really the most annoying part for me to deal with. I mean, shoulder and DS are absolutely, I mean, they're terrible for any killer, but for Singularity specifically, it's dead hard. Because any exhaustion, the way you can counter basically like any other exhaustion perk is like with sprint burst, life, overcome. Basically what you do is you already have the survivors slipstreamed. Just let them use their exhaustion and then wait until their haste ends. So once their haste ends, that's when you teleport and basically they get no distance from you. But with dead hard, it's the complete opposite because you don't know if they have it. And as you swing, if they land a dead hard, it's going to take you considerably longer to down survivor, especially if they're near an area with a lot of resources.
So with dead hard being like the perk that's the best perk for survivors, what are the best perks for the Singularity to run? Like, do you think there's a specific perk that Singularity uses better than any other killer in the entire game, and why?
Absolutely. One of the things that I've always said is probably one of the most underrated perks on Singularity is Surge. So especially if you're doing like a win streak or something, Surge is the most clutch perk in the entire game for Singularity because you're eventually going to come across a map like Larry's, Hawkins, Midwich. Those are already extremely hard maps to deal with. And on top of that, if you're dealing with teams that are just really heavy on gens, it's going to be really hard to not only manage the survivors, but also having to stop and kick gens. But just the fact that you can just, like, if you get down near any gen, the fact that you can not only get information, but extra regression is huge. I have gone against some pretty decent teams on like Larry's and Hawkins. And one of the few reasons I've only won was just because I hit them with Surge enough times. And then on top of that, when you combine Surge with like Rapid, so it makes looping Singularity considerably harder than it already is. And you can get those extra few downs that you probably wouldn't be able to get without Rapid. And that completely changes the game. It's just little minute things like that is what can be the difference between a 4K and a 4 out.
Actually getting perk value? That's so crazy. And with the other part of what you bring in with the loadout, I'm going to talk about add-ons now. I don't really know Singularity add-ons. Obviously, that's the whole point of the series is that I don't know things about every killer.
Yeah.
But how do you feel about Singularity's add-ons, like balance-wise? Are they overtuned, undertuned? And what are your favorite add-ons to run? And do you have any like special mentions of add-ons that you just want to talk about?
Yeah, so one of the things I would say is Singularity's add-ons are quite interesting. Like he has some add-ons that are just like, okay, why is this even there? And then he has some of those add-ons where it's like, why is this allowed? And then there's just some like the even like medium where it's like, it's all right. But specifically, one of the things I tell people is I highly recommend people that they do not run like any sort of ore add-ons because there's a few add-ons where you throw down a biopod and it reveals anyone that's near the biopod. Like you don't need or on Singularity. Like he already has his biopods. It might be decent for chase, but it's not going to do you any good for anything else.
Because with the biopod, you can just place it down and then look through it, and then like you see him anyway. You don't need aura.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it might be decent on like a few maps, but it's very, very situational. And I tell people it's like, no, it's not a good add-on to run. You want to run something that's very consistent. One of my favorite add-ons to run is probably nanomachine gel and diagnostics tool repair. And so diagnostics tool repair it's a brown add-on, which you're probably thinking is like it's probably not that good. But essentially what that add-on does is it increases your biopod range by 4 meters. And it doesn't really sound like a lot, but when you actually play out the match, you're going to see a considerable difference in range. And it makes some maps even easier than it already is for Singularity. And especially since for like in the comp scene, like there's maps like Wreckers, Dead Dog Saloon, Groaning Storehouse. Like it makes those maps so much harder for the survivors because you can place way better biopod spots. And on top of that, if you place a biopod that's so far away from the gen, you combine that with nanomachine gel, so that decreases your biopod cooldown by 15% after you slipstream someone. But if it's a perfect placement, there is nothing the survivor can do to stop that biopod from getting a teleport.
And like, what would you say is their best add-on?
Well, obviously his best add-on would be Soma Family Photo. It is basically an anti-heal perk at its own. Just being able to inflict deep wound onto survivors just for simply slipstreaming them if they're injured is an insane amount of pressure. I mean, I would win almost 100% of my games if I ran this add-on alone.
Yeah, and then you don't have to deal with that hard either.
It's essentially by far his best add-on. But if you want to be really sweaty, you can run Soma Family Photo plus Diagnostics Tool Repair, and you're just going to be an unstoppable force. It's basically what makes Singularity F tier and the fun tier list for everyone else.
And speaking of tiering Singularity, so killers are going to obviously have like subjective ranking in terms of things, but how would you rate Singularity as far as a killer in terms of its strength. Obviously, you don't have to just be like, oh, well, clearly they're in this tier. But if you just want to like talk about your experience and like how strong you think Singularity is and like the different situations for Singularity's strength, like how good is he?
Well, I would absolutely say that he's probably the highest in A tier. He's definitely not better than like Nurse or Blight or Hillbilly, but he is extremely strong in terms of those lists. I would say he's definitely better than Ghoul. I would say he's definitely better than like Plague. But the thing with him though is he's probably a little bit more map dependent. I mean, just because indoor maps exist itself, and there's some main buildings are just extremely annoying to deal with. Like basically anything that's got terrible like line of sight, it's probably not gonna be the greatest map for Singularity, but I would definitely say that he is top of A tier, better than Ghoul, better than Plague, because he has one thing that almost 100% of killers don't have, which is information. Information does so much for you because essentially you can basically tell as to whenever survivors are working on gens, wherever they're rotating, you can figure out exactly what the survivors are doing if your camera placements are good within maybe 5 seconds of looking through your biopods. Just being able to just skim the map and just scan it at a rapid pace, I think is what really separates him. Really, the only thing I would say though is what separates him from S tier though is the fact that he doesn't have some sort of like instant down ability like Billy has, or like Blight has a really good 2-tap potential.
Yeah, it's just kind of something that like he can use mobility, but it can be countered while like Nurse or Blight or Billy, like they can just go.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And then Singularity's pod can be turned off, it can be line of sighted, and then there's a bunch of stuff that's like, well, no, actually. And that's probably the thing that's keeping him out of S tier.
Yeah, and it really just comes down to RNG because like a map with like a lot of pallets and like bad lines, like it's like one a really good example is Red Forest. Red Forest, in my opinion, is probably one of the hardest maps for Singularity in terms of outdoor, just because there's so many trees, so many bushes, the hitboxes are weird, the main building is frustrating to deal with. It basically, like the camera spots are like, I guess, okay in terms of gen defense, but you're not going to be able to catch people like rotating through a particular area or somewhat. So you kind of are forced to just stick your biopods on gens, which people can just grab an EMP and they can either wait for you to slipstream and then EMP, or they can just straight up just EMP the camera and work the gen. And on top of that, it's a really big map as well. I mean, Singularity doesn't have like some like dash ability or something like that. He has to like walk over to the opposite side of the map. So it's just basically understanding as to like when you can waste this killer's time or how you can waste this killer's time. Like what would be the most irritating thing to do.
With the Red Forest thing being like probably one of Singularity's poorer maps, what would you say is Singularity's best map? And on the opposite end of things, what is his worst map? And of course, just as a follow-up, are those the same as your least favorite and your favorite maps, or are your favorites based on something else?
Yeah, so I would say his best map would 100% be Blood Lodge because all the loops are very open. It's very easy to defend gens, and sometimes Blood Lodge RNG can be really bad. So there can be some pallets that spawn absolutely... You can either have a lot of pallets spawn, or you can have the Sahara Desert. Like, there's really no in between with that map. But either way, it's a really, really good map for Singularity, just because you can place your biopods pretty far away, defend gens pretty easily, and just spread a bunch of pressure on survivors. I would say that would be his absolute best map, probably like right like Wrecker's Yard being like a close second. In terms of worst map, 100% it goes to Larry's, just because, I mean, it's Larry's. Like, I think a lot of people can agree, but Larry's is extremely strong itself, and on top of that, it's an indoor map, so it hard count was already like 90% of killers. And
Oh, I know, believe me.
yeah, I don't know how you do as a Nemesis main. That's why I play good killers, because I can't play the fun ones. I'm too competitive for that. But with Larry's itself, the biopod placements are always going to be terrible.
Yeah, I feel that.
Yeah. On top of that, like there's really no risk for the survivors. You essentially have to play chase Singularity, so you can't really like be too like it's going to be harder to defend gems. Absolutely. Basically, all your pressure is just your ability to chase and down survivors on that map. So any team that can grab a biopod or grab an EMP and an EMP a camera, double gens, and on top of that, like the perks will also make that map just like an almost insta lose. And then I would say my favorite map, this is actually a really, really controversial one, but I would have to say Eerie of Crows because it's a pretty open map, but the pallets are actually they're decently difficult to deal with, which is what I like to have a little bit of a challenge in Singularity. I would not want to play like the best map every single time because it would just be boring. But Eerie is like a mix of like really good biopod placements, but also the loops are pretty annoying to deal with. So there's still like a decent amount of counterplay you can do as a Singularity, but it's going to give you a run for your money.
Every time I hear like a favorite map take and it's going to be a hot take, I mean, Lilith literally said his favorite map was Larry's, so like I get it. Like it's always...
That is interesting.
I like RPD for aesthetic reasons, but like I'm sure that's fork found in kitchen. So
Yeah, honestly, like RPD, like I love it. Like I don't really mind RPD as Singularity. I mean, it's definitely by far his best indoor map, but most of the time when I play against good teams on that map, I have to hold a 3-gen, and the match lasts like 20 minutes. Which that's not the reason I play Singularity. I don't play Singularity to hold a 3-gen. Like I play him to be basically punishing survivors' mistakes and just trying to down survivors as fast as possible using all the techs and basically utilize his tools. That's what I find fun about Singularity.
and what do you find the most fun about Singularity? If you had to pick one thing, if you had to pinpoint a single part of this killer, what is the absolute biggest joy that he brings you?
Oh, I would just absolutely say, I mean, it's just his ability to control the map, assuming everything goes his way. You place your biopods basically everywhere, and you just have full control of the map. When you have full control of the map, you basically are playing God with these survivors. I mean, you can just absolutely control as to like when you want to chase this person, you want to chase this person, and no, I don't want to chase this person. Do I want to defend this gen? No, I don't want to defend this gen. It's just essentially when you just have full control of the survivors, you should be able to win from that point on. And it's really difficult for survivors to deal with, and it's probably like the most skillful way you can play Singularity is just establishing map control and just being able to efficiently down survivors.
Just like feeling that you actually have some control over the game.
Exactly. And with your biopods, you have the information you need. And so you essentially feel in charge of the match instead of the survivors.
Which is like how it should be in the power role, unsurprisingly.
Exactly.
If being the power role in the match is like the thing you enjoy the most about Singularity specifically, I do want to ask on the opposite end of things, what do you dislike the most about him? We all love our killers. We love playing the game as this character for a reason, but like obviously there's going to be something that's like, wow, this sucks. What is that for Singu?
Honestly though, like for me, like the way Singularity like works in general is perfect for me. I mean, it's really just the environment. So, I mean, that just includes maps. I mean, maps are absolutely what will just ruin the fun of Singularity. Because, I mean, the whole point of Singularity is like you want to place good biopods and all that stuff. But when you're on a map that just completely disallows you from really being able to play the killer, that just already itself just completely ruins the vibe of the killer. And you have to like sometimes you have to play so boring to the point where you have to like hold a 3-gen to like in order to like maintain your win streak or something, which 3-gens I think we can all agree are probably by far the most boring way to play Dead by Daylight. And it's not fun for the killer, it's not fun for the survivor especially. In that retrospect, it's just a lose-lose situation for both sides.
If you don't get a good map that lets you actually do anything interesting, you just have to be boring.
Right, exactly. That's probably like the best way to play Singularity as well, is just to play boring.
And you don't like playing boring, obviously, because it's boring.
Yeah, exactly. 3-genning is probably by far it's my last resort against a good team.
Yeah, fair enough. And with playing in a boring way, as is something that happens every once in a while, how frequently do you really run into like community members that are maybe less so fans of the Singularity, and how often do you really run into people that are like fans of Singularity or like also other Singularity players? And just how do you feel the community in general feels about Singularity? Like what is the general consensus on the killer?
Almost 80% of people that I go against really despise Singularity. I mean, even when I absolutely outplay them and all that stuff, like I don't even need to hold like a 3-gen or something against this team, but Singularity is an extremely punishing killer. You make like very basic mistakes, and a good Singularity should be able to capitalize on those, and from there like it's just going to be a snowball. And Singularity is like probably like one of the best sluggers in the game right next to Billy. So most of the time I've had people really despise Singularity, but there's also a very few amount of people that just love Singularity. I have actually been DDoS one time because I slugged a team before.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I was streaming on Twitch one time and I slugged a team, and the next day my internet shuts off for 2 minutes. I'm like, huh, interesting. I didn't think much of it. I look at my antivirus software and it said that I was hit with an attack. I'm like, oh, okay. So I just ended the stream from there. But really that was by far like the worst situation that I had. And I've had people come into like my Steam profile. I have some people come to my YouTube channel. They come in just to basically tell me how much of a piece of shit I am, which I mean, I don't really care about that. Go for it. But I enjoy it when survivors suffer.
I mean, it's always going to be subjective, you know, like...
There's also, like, the very few, like, positive experiences I'll have with survivors. I'm like, man, dude, you were by far the best Singularity player I've ever seen. That feels pretty good. Because, like, Singularity definitely has, like, a skill gap. I mean, maybe on some maps, it's really, really easy to play him on.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, especially if I beat a team on a difficult map and they were running good perks, and I go, oh, hey, you actually did pretty well. It feels very rewarding, is all I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, of course. And with the skill gap on Singularity, are there any like specific techs that Singularity has, or like anything that you need to learn? Like, obviously there's going to be a difference between someone that's like playing their first game versus someone that's played 100 hours of Singularity, but like, what is something that you could, like, let's say you watch a clip of a Singularity player and like you don't know who it is, obviously. What would be like something you could see and discern and be like, okay, yeah, this guy knows what they're doing? That's like something that you don't learn for a bit. What is the interesting below the surface techniques that Singularity can do?
One of the things I can really critique on people is just the way the add-ons they run as well. I mean, some people, I'm not going to blabber on with add-ons too much because it's not really the most important thing, but one of the big things I see that people run is spent oxygen tank, which basically inflicts exhaustion when you slipstream the survivors for 6 seconds, which in my opinion, you do not need that add-on. Really, your only threat, like, you have to be really patient with when you teleport. Like, Singularities that display patience as like when they teleport to survivors, like, will be a good time to teleport, would be not be a good time to teleport, because one of the best counters of Singularity are windows. So I'm gonna define a tech called chain ball tech, and I'm gonna try to explain this as simple as I can. So chain ball tech, imagine you're a survivor who's just beeline to a window, and then you're just spamming whatever prompt you use to vault the window. So at what point you get the prompt and you vault the window, and then you just stand still. So now if I try to teleport onto you, normally you would think I teleport like directly on top of you. However, I'm going to teleport exactly to the point where you pressed your button to vault the window. So I'm going to teleport to the opposite side. So that's chain ball tech. A lot of people don't understand how it really works. I mean, it's a lot better when you visually see it than just verbally hearing how the tech works. But being able to see Singularities understand if a survivor is trying to do a chain bolt tech, so they're displaying patience, seeing what they're doing. They're vaulting a window and standing still, and they're now teleporting. I was like, okay, this guy knows what he's doing. And on top of that, when it comes to different like loops and tiles, like some Singularities, like it's like some tiles are so difficult. Like the best play is just to get the survivor to drop it as fast as possible and break the pallet. There's not really a whole lot of mind gaming you can do. So just a good judgment on as to like when to teleport, good judgment as to when you should either try and play the tile for the hit or just play the tile to get the pallet down as fast as possible to break the pallet.
Okay, but nothing like a hug tech or anything like insane.
I mean, he doesn't really have like any crazy. He doesn't like have like any crazy like hug tech, like anything crazy like that. Like I would say like probably like the cheesiest thing he has is he has a little aim assist like cheese that you can do, which I discovered myself. And basically, you can teleport completely through a wall. It's kind of hard to explain, but basically, if you're like at a like a wall, like holding a check spot shack, but you can't see the survivor. But basically, what you can do is you can aim it. So Singularity hand cannon has an aim assist. So if you aim your hand cannon kind of near where the survivor is, but kind of like out toward like the open, you want to like aim like out in the open, similar like how Wesker changes his hub type. You look outside, like out in the open, and then you kind of like want to try and click the dash. Singularity is kind of similar. You want to look out in the open, and then from there, if the survivor is close enough, the auto aim can shift toward the survivor's hitbox, and then you can get a teleport just completely through a wall.
Okay, yeah.
I would say that would probably be his craziest thing. It's not really like a whole lot. Basically, the rest of his texts are just understanding how his teleportation works.
It's like a ball and chain, yeah. I've heard that before. Absolutely. And with the teleporting through wall thing, is that like an intended feature or a bug, or is that just like kind of how it's meant to work? And just in general, going off of the second bit, does Singularity have any bugs that are like actually detrimentally affecting the killer? Are there any that are like more of a on the tech end of things now because of how often they've been there? Bugs.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't have like any game breaking bugs, I would say, but one of the big things that he really suffers from is just hitboxes in general, which I think a lot of people, including you as well, horceror.
Yeah.
But hitboxes can be extremely funky because Singularity has an aim assist. So if you're trying to like aim to lock onto like a survivor to teleport onto them, sometimes like hitboxes will either work way too well in your favor or they won't work at all in your favor, where you should probably be teleporting onto them, but there's just like one little stick that's just barely sticking out, and that's just going to completely prevent you from teleporting onto the survivor. Or there's just a bunch of obstacles around, but you somehow are still able to get a teleport. It's very odd. I think a ping has a lot to do with it as well, but I would say that Singularity just has a big love-hate relationship with hitboxes, especially in map environments.
So not necessarily bugs to him, but just more like bugs in the environment around him type of deal.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's usually how it goes. I don't know if you've seen the S.T.A.R video where it was talking about like the 10 things DbD needs to fix. And then one of them is just hitboxes visually do not make like consistent sense.
Like the thing with this game though is there's there's a lot of killers that are coming out, and it's coming to a point where it's really, really hard to basically make every killer flow as well, especially since there isn't like really any form of like RNG formula for like any like other killer. It basically maps are trying to accommodate for every single killer that exists in the game right now. And I think it's really good for some killers, but for some other killers, it's really difficult to accommodate.
And I do feel for the devs when it's like, oh yeah, by the way, there's 40 different killers worth of hitboxes that you have to deal with. It's like, okay, wow.
Yeah.
For every single map that they make, I mean, obviously I don't know about game dev, so I can't say anything, but that seems like
Yeah.
a bit tough. So next time before you flame behavior for hitboxes, just remember that obviously things could be better. I'm not saying it couldn't be, but
Yeah.
you're not a game dev. I'm not a game dev.
I play way too many games.
You, the viewer, I'm pointing at you now. You're not a game dev, probably. Hi, Kyle. You're a game dev, but I'm not talking to you.
Yeah, not you, Kyle.
So with game dev, and you're not being a game dev, if you could change anything about Singularity, like anything at all, let's say you are the Singularity game dev now. Maybe not the one actually doing the coding, but the idea guy. You're the Singularity idea guy now. What would you change about the killer? And I do mean anything at all.
Absolutely, the one thing I would say about Singularity, the one thing I would change is just being able to EMP cameras from a completely different floor. There could be a biopod on the second floor that's really high, but from the first floor, you can still EMP. I think that is just extremely stupid how people can do that. And I get like Singularity is a strong killer itself, but that's one of the big reasons that's like why Midwich is an extremely hard map for Singularity. It's just because survivors can basically from any floor just EMP your cameras. And I get that it's really hard to code that because Singularity can also get some really nasty camera spots, and you wouldn't really be able to counter it.
Yeah, I actually on this last Friday, actually, I was playing a game on Nostromo, a survivor, and I played against a Singularity, and there was a biopod so high up on Nostromo that we couldn't even EMP it.
Yeah, I think I know which one that is.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's like, that's kind of one of the reasons why Singularity is a really complicated killer, because his power is very complicated, and the way it works is also very complicated. And I feel like Singularity is going to be one of those killers where there's really not going to really be like a happy medium, but you're kind of have to deal with what it is. But that would probably be like one of the big things I would change. It's just forcing survivors to have to basically use an EP on basically something that's on its floor. The other thing I would change is the add-ons. The add-ons, like something like I wouldn't change, but there's like also a fair decent amount of them where I would absolutely, it's like, why does this like exist? Like the aura ones, for example, like Singularity does not need aura. Like he could be running something that's far more fun. And then one of his Eries deny requisition form. So EMPs take 30 seconds longer to generate and all survivors start slipstream. That's not fun for any side. It's not a good add-on for Singularity, I wouldn't say. Like you might be able to get a really fast down, but I don't think it's really as good as people think as it is. And it's also an extremely boring add-on to go against. So I would probably be changing a bunch of add-ons themselves. Other than that, I would say Singularity is in a pretty decent spot.
And do you think he would need to be an S tier? Or do you think he's good just like where he is?
I actually prefer that he's not in S tier though.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not as like easy as like an S tier. Like you play like Billy like a bunch of times, like you'll get really good with him. You'll win almost 100% of the game. Same way with Nurse. Same way with Blight. Singularity is basically, he's not an S tier, but you can play him that basically resembles an S tier.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing, when I'm asking about like what you would change, this isn't necessarily a just what you would change question, but it's a little bit more of a for fun one. So cosmetics. Right? I am going to ask you like what you would want to have as your own personal cosmetic. If there was ever like a Jera Singularity, like what would you have made for that if you had full executive control over it? And just in general, how do you feel about Singularity's cosmetics? Like, do you think he has enough? Do you think he doesn't have enough? And like, what is your favorite cosmetic set to wear? And is there like a Jera outfit that's like your thing?
In terms of like a cosmetic that I would want, I mean, there's a bunch of ideas, but I wouldn't even be sure of that. I would say Singularity has so much potential in terms of cosmetics. The cosmetics he has, like there's some that are pretty decent. There's some that's like, okay. But I really wish Singularity would get more cosmetics. And I mean, nobody really plays this killer as much, which I kind of understand. But Singularity is one of those killers that has the potential to have some really, really good cosmetics. In terms of like something that I would want specifically for a me skin, I mean, I would have a bunch of ideas, but I mean, some of his cosmetics I really like, but some of his Cosmetics, it's like I would never run this in a million years. I would say like my all-time favorite would probably just be like his default, like the default bloody head, and then just like the rest of the part is just default, but it's just recolors. The recolors I think are pretty sleek, but it's mostly just his weapon. His weapon has basically you can combine his weapon skin with basically like any other fit, and it would still look really cool. That's one thing I will give behaviors. They really nailed down the weapon for Singularity. But I would just say in terms of like body cosmetics and like maybe like headpieces, some of the headpieces are pretty good, but really it just comes down to the body, and the body I feel like they could do so much more.
And like, is there like a dream skin you would have made for Singularity?
Honestly, though, I would like something from Star Wars. That would be awesome. I wouldn't like exactly know what something like from the Star Wars universe would be pretty cool, but maybe like a Terminator like type outfit. But honestly, though, like I wouldn't even know like where to answer that question.
That's fair. It's a little bit of an open-ended one. So if you don't have something in mind already, then a little bit tough. Absolutely. So cosmetics aren't really something that are linked to the gameplay. I mean, sometimes like a cosmetic will be a little bit bigger, like you lose a little bit of seeing on the screen, whatever. So like very minor changes to playstyle. So are you a playstyle purist, as in you only like the playstyle, you only like how like the gameplay feels, or are you someone that's more of a deeper appreciator of Singularity? Do you appreciate the lore of the character, or even just like a little bit of A, a little bit of B? Like, are you a full package deal or just a gameplay deal? How much do you like Singularity?
Yeah, honestly, it really just turned out I just absolutely loved his gameplay, and I just love like the way the character I love the way the character move, and just basically you feel like an unstoppable force.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of that, like I also started really liking Singularity more as like when I kind of like learned more about his lore. And it's like this guy is just relentless. Like this guy is just going to absolutely mess up your lobbies if you mess with this guy. And that's kind of like what I like about this killer as well, is there's also a lot of people who like, especially like the better teams, like they don't really try and get better against Singularity. So when I do go against them, I just absolutely destroy them.
I mean, I suppose it would be a hard character to practice against if no one's really playing him to practice against him.
Yeah, exactly. And there's not really a lot of people that like religiously play Singularity, besides like the few like YouTubers and like the few comp players. But there isn't like a lot of people who like religiously like exclusively main Singularity. And he's kind of just, his player base is honestly has just been dying. It's kind of like just been decreasing. A lot of people have stopped playing Singularity because of his recent buffs that he's got. And like people think that Singularity is just too no skill, which I will definitely agree that Singularity is definitely much easier to play compared to his last patch, where he didn't like have his aim assist and a few other tweaks that he had, different add-on reworks. He's definitely been a bit easier, but people still really underestimate the potential that Singularity has. I think Singularity, out of all the A tier killers, is the closest to S tier, and it's not even close compared to other killers.
Yeah, he's like the most A tier there is, but he's not.
Yeah, exactly. That's basically his tier, is just like parentheses S and then A tier.
You're on the council, but we do not grant you the rank of master. Exactly.
Yep, bingo. And then he unleashes his rage by relentlessly slugging survivors.
Yeah, understandable. I feel like we could get there all the time, yeah. So when you're getting relentlessly slugged as Survivor, I assume you play a little bit of Survivor here and there. When you play games of Survivor and you run into a stray Singularity that is not you, do you enjoy playing against your own killer?
Oh, absolutely. I love going against Singularity. And I think a lot of people out there, like, especially if they just understood like how he plays and basically how his teleportation works, he is probably one of the most fun chase killers in the game, which is actually pretty surprising. But there's just a lot of decision making that comes along with it, and there's a little bit of risk that is involved in it. Because like he's kind of similar to Clown in retrospect, where like you like with Clown, it's like, okay, I go this pallet and I'm probably gonna have to drop this pallet. With Singularity, it's like, ooh, can I drop this pallet? Oh, actually, I might be able to make the window. I might be able to make this pallet. I might be able to grade a little bit more. Oh, I'm definitely not gonna be able to grade as much. I probably should drop the pallet and force them to break this so I have more time to get to a better loop. But I would say if they're holding a 3-gen, it's absolutely like the most irritating thing to go against. And it's not even close. And people really underestimate. I mean, I think a lot of people know what a 3-gen Singularity looks like, and it's not fun. And the counterplay is extremely boring. And you're probably going to be spending close to 40 minutes to an hour just trying to beat one douchebag that's just holding a 3-gen.
And they did now make that kick limit a thing, which is, it helps, but it's still a pain.
It helps, but if you're lucky, you can get the match over in 30 minutes after you've declared, oh yeah, this guy's going to hold a 3-gen.
Yeah, and I assume they don't use the abandoned feature because they're there to hold the 3-gen, not to win.
Oh yeah. They don't ever use the abandoned feature. It's a game of ego. Who can ego whichever side the hardest.
I mean, fair enough. If both sides are stubborn, movable object and unstoppable force, right?
Yeah, I had a game one time where I was on RPD, and it was just against a team that were just running really good anti-tunnel perks, and they were just teabagging, and they were popping gens like crazy. It's like, all right, you know what? Screw you guys. I'm just going to hold a 3-gen. I don't care. I got time on my hand. And the game lasted almost 50 minutes.
Oh my god.
But eventually I got one kill, and then I just relentlessly slugged the rest of the survivors until eventually. And I was using Surge as well, so I had regression constantly, over and over and over. So they couldn't really keep up, and I would just basically, I would let them reset my cameras, and then it's just basically back to square one. It's just a rinse and repeat process until eventually whichever side makes the biggest mistake, which most of the time is going to be the survivors. It takes one guy to just completely flop the game.
Yes.
And Singularity capitalizes on those mistakes. It's basically over for the survivors.
And did you win that game?
Oh yeah, I won that game, definitely.
Yeah, I just gotta check, you know.
Yeah. You know what's funny though is probably my entire time of playing Singularity, especially like, I mean, I'm not going to include like comp matches, but exclusively like public matches. I would say I've probably been outed 6 times total. And that's just, 4 of them were Larry's. One of them was Nostromo, and one of them was Dead Dog Slins. Shout out to Link, by the way. Yeah, 6 times is probably like all I can recount. And basically, when I did get outed, they were either comp players or they were, it was just a really bad map in general.
And obviously, I'm not saying that you should tell people that they should be doing the whole hard slugging thing as general advice, but if someone is learning Singularity for the first time, what is like the first thing you would teach them on how to play Singularity? Like, what's some good tips and tricks that you wish you were taught like really early on? Obviously not like a 5-paragraph, just like the basic stuff.
Really, it's just biopod placements. Like, you can kind of like figure it out as you go along. Like, you'll learn pretty quickly as like where you need to be placing your biopods. But really, it's just the big thing I tell people is do not play Chase Singularity, which is just using your biopods to slipstream survivors. And when you play Chase Singularity, your biopods are going to be everywhere. You're going to have no map control. You're not going to have like any sort of pressure on survivors. They're not going to know where anybody is. So one of the big things I tell people is like Singularity is a killer where you can play extremely aggressive, but also very territorial. So what I tell people is you need to be placing biopods on gens or like right next to the gens, like or just overlooking gens in general. And the other thing is like in terms of chase, be extremely patient with your teleportations, because if survivors are just like holding like windows or something like that, all it takes is one survivor a little bit distance of a window, you're not going to be able to get a hit of overclock. Like they have to like really mess up for you to be able to get a hit. So you just need to display a little bit more patience. You can zone survivors to an area that's a little bit worse for them, and then you can teleport to them to potentially score a pretty easy hit.
So just patience, basically.
Yeah, Singularity is just a game of patience.
Patience, place your pods. Don't only use them in chase. You do want to get some map set up because that's where he excels.
Yeah, exactly. You essentially need map control, and then you're of course going to need like maybe like one biopod on your hand, like always, just to be able to slipstream one person without the risk of destroying a biopod. Because if you have all your biopods down and then you place another biopod, it's going to remove the first biopod that you place within the match, and then it goes in chronological order.
Kind of like Hag.
Yeah, so you have a really good biopod placement that you place at the start, and you basically use all your biopods, and then you place another one, you're going to lose that really good biopod placement. So, and especially it's worse because if you're across the map, you're going to have to go all the way back to that side to replace a biopod, and that's just wasted time.
Yeah. Not ideal when you have to. I have a lot of reasons why I don't like playing Hag, but not being able to choose which trap I replace, I don't like that. I really don't.
Yeah, no.
We briefly brought it up earlier with updating the Singularity, not necessarily what you would update about Singularity, but people quitting the Singularity due to his updates making him easier, which I think he got like a auto aim on his, he got a couple of things. So how would you say that updates have treated the character, and would you say that any buffs and nerfs that Singularity received were fair?
Yeah, honestly, I would say though that the updates have been mostly pretty fair to Singularity himself. So the latest update they received they made EMPs considerably stronger, which honestly I was kind of fine with, because like EMPs back then were pretty easy for survivors to obtain because it would just be a progress bar and it would fill on itself. But now it basically 97% the EMP box. So you have to do the rest of the 3%. But they also made the EMPs a little bit stronger, which I think is also pretty fair for survivors. But in terms of like basically all the updates, I think were also just extremely fair in general when it comes to like its aim assist being added, which I think was a great thing. It opens up the ability for other players that are on like consoles and such, because Singularity like back then was very advantageous for PC players compared to like console players. But now that he has the aim assist feature, so if you look at your biopod and you press down the button that you use to view your biopod, you can basically get a little like aimbot that just instantly locks onto a survivor that's within range. And I think it's been just a great update, especially for like newer Singularity players in general, because he's a really hard killer to learn. And I mean, there's some things about the aim assist I made tone down, but I think where he stands right now is really good, because not only like people can learn this killer, but they can also utilize this killer pretty early on at the start.
Okay. So a lot of killers in DbD have not had such great updates, but you would say Singularities, like for him at least, have been overall good. Like he hasn't been trickstered or anything crazy.
Yeah, exactly. He's actually one of those few killers I've actually had fair updates, because like back then, like Singularity was probably a little bit cheesy, but they made him stronger while also made him a little bit more punishing, which is one of the things that I think was a great change. Because overall, like Singularity is always going to be like a frustrating killer to go against whenever, like regardless of map. I think that EMPs in general have generally been like a good factor for the survivors and the killer. EMPs used to just be really strong in general.
Yeah, and you didn't even have to like waste any time getting them out of the box. You could just like
exactly
go over there and grab it. I will say I miss, guilty as charged. It was nice as survivor, but that change was
I don't miss it at all. I don't miss it in the slightest bit. I would say it's a good change as well, because they buffed EMPs as well. I think it was a really good trade-off, because you had to spend more time grabbing an EMP, but also the EMP did more damage. I mean, it just had better range in general, and I think it takes less time to EMP now. But I think overall, it was just a really good change. It kind of made you choose, do you want to work gens, or do you want to basically mess with the killer's power for a bit? So it's not just overall punishing for the Singularity. It can go either ways for both sides.
Okay, all right. And, this might sound like a little crazy to say, but bear with me here. Singularity is not the only thing that BHVR has changed in Dead by Daylight. The game also changes around him. So as far as like everything else, I mean literally everything else, so like new survivors, new perks, new maps, reworks, etc., how has the game changed around the Singularity, and do you think he has kept up over the years?
Oh, absolutely. I would say that Singularity has always been, like, ever since his rework, he's probably been like the best A tier killer, and it's probably not, I would say the second best would have to be Plague, but going back to Singularity has always been extremely strong within the meta. And I would say that Shoulder the Burden has definitely made it a little bit harder to play Singularity. When I say a little bit, I mean considerably harder, but for the most part, Singularity has kind of been the same. And I think regardless of like whatever anti-slug system that behavior eventually has for the game, Singularity I think will probably be always like one of the best sluggers right next to Hillbilly. And it's just his ability to have map control, and then just the ability to just punish survivors severely for just simple little mistakes, and just having that overwhelming, relentless feeling inflicted on the survivors as you play. And I think that comes with the aggressive nature of Singularity, and especially the proper way you play him. Realistic behavior would really have to implement something that's so strongly like unfun for all killers to make Singularity like a B tier killer. Unless they just keep adding indoor maps, I don't think Singularity is really going to be dropping like a spot from his tier list.
I like indoor maps personally, I'm sorry to say. Except Larry's. We can agree on Larry's. I don't like Larry's.
Well, hey, we can trade maps. I'll take your outdoor maps in exchange for my indoor maps.
Absolutely. I have a good time on them because my zombies actually do something. So, do you think that Singularity has given you any transferable gameplay skills to any other killers? I mean, like, do you think by playing Singularity, you could pick up a different killer and just be better at them, or like feel right at home? Like, do you think there's like I wouldn't say there's a one-to-one, obviously, but like people are always going to be annoying about it. It's like, oh, well, Dredge is just like, it's Freddy and it's anti-loop. It's kind of like Artist. So like, is there anything like Singu that you could be like, okay, now that I have all this Singularity experience, I can go into this killer and play them as well now?
Yeah, I would say one of the things that Singularity really excels at is game sense, because not only like if you're like on a map where you're opposite side of Shack, like I feel like these stars are at Shack and you have a biopod right there, I look, oh yeah, they're at Shack. It kind of reassures your game sense at a point, and especially when you keep doing it over and over and you're right almost 90% of the time, it kind of reassures that you have built some sort of game sense. So even if you're playing a different killer that doesn't like have like the information ability like Singularity has, I think what he does is he really helps reassure the game sense confidence you have, because a lot of people doubt themselves as killer. And so I guess with Singularity, like you just have that reassurance that you're right. And so Singularity is also probably a pretty good way to build some sort of like game sense and patience as well. Really, he's a killer that forces you to use your brain to be able to like utilize them properly. And if you have that same mindset with basically any other killer, I think you could really excel with them.
Okay. So less like the mechanics and the piloting of a killer, but more so like the game sense you learn from playing this killer is something that you can take to everybody else.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, cool. So going back to the start of Dead by Daylight for you entirely, what got you into DbD and when did you start playing it?
So I started playing DbD around, I would say, mid 2017. It was a friend of mine that actually got me into the game. Like, hey, this new game just came out. It's been out for probably a little over a year. It looks really fun. And I'm like, this game sucks. This game looks terrible. Like, why would anyone play this?
Does he know?
I was right, but also wrong at the same time. But I eventually gave the game a try, and it's like, oh man, one of the first kills I started playing was Hillbilly. But I think it's just what kind of drew me to this game was just that you could basically like meet anyone and just get along with people quite well. It was a newer game at the start. Like nobody really knew 4v1 asymmetrical horror experiences. It was a new game, and I wanted to give it a try, and I really liked it, and I took some breaks then and there, but it was always like a game I'd come back to, you know. When I first saw that they were adding killers like Michael Myers, Leatherface, like those were killers that I would personally have wanted, but I think Myers was already there when I first started playing the game. I was just like, this is amazing. And then I got hooked when S.T.A.R.S chapter came out. I'm like, this game has a lot, like this game is actually like pretty decent.
Oh, you got hooked, huh?
I see what you did there. Yeah, I did, I guess you can say.
So you got around to the Saw chapter and then it became like one of your main games. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you began in 2017. That is 8 years ago at this point. That is quite a long ways. DbD is now, I believe it just had its 9th anniversary. Yes,
we're approaching 10.
We're almost at 10. Well, 10's next year, but we're in the 9th year. So DbD is a game that's been lasting for a really long time. Up there with the greats like, I don't know, you know, like Dota, World of Warcraft. We're not quite in the double digits yet, but we're getting there. I do want to ask you how long you think Dead by Daylight is going to last, because we've been having some patches this year past the 9.0 mark that have been questionable at best, and the design preview that we most recently did of 9.2.0 was also something that was relatively like, what are we doing? But they have like walked it back, and they do this a lot where they'll put something out, they don't give us the numbers, we panic for a few days, we get the numbers, we still panic, and then they just don't do things. But like, we know they're gonna keep trying to do the same thing just with improved numbers,
right?
And like a lot of the time I do feel like they miss the mark. I do feel like a lot of the time they hit the mark, of course, like that's why the game succeeds, and I do think BHVR deserves credit for keeping this game alive for as long as they have.
Absolutely.
Because realistically, if this was an EA game, it would be dead at like year 2.
Year 2, that's kind of gracious.
Yeah, fair enough. But how long do you think Dead by Daylight is going to last, and why?
Well, I think, this is kind of like a given answer, but DbD is like a game that can keep going and going and going and going. But I feel like one of the things that, essentially the biggest problem with DbD is there is a lot of content. There's a bunch of killers, a bunch of survivors, and each character has 3 perks added to their name. So I would say it's really hard to learn as newer players. But I would say one of the big things that really would probably seal the deal for DbD is, I think if they just continue adding more and more and more content, and then I think eventually, I feel like they'll come to a point where the game might just become so overwhelming. And then on top of that, I feel like behavior might add some sort of like system that's just so unfun for the game. That could really seal the deal, but I really doubt behavior would do anything like that. So I think it probably is just going to come down to time, and as to when behavior says, okay, it's probably just, we've had a good run. It's time to close the servers. We're not making as much money anymore to hold these licenses and all this other stuff.
Yeah, I think Pixel had pretty much the exact same sentiment. It's like, it's not going to die unless like BHVR loses the passion for doing it.
Yeah, exactly. And especially since, I think it's going to be really hard because, just the ability to obtain different licenses, because like, I think a lot of people would want their licenses to be added to this game, but also the fact that they can combine like licensed chapters and then plus like original chapters. Like it has a lot that it can do. But I think what will really seal the deal is we no longer receive like as many newer players compared to like a few years back. And especially for returning players as well. There's so much content in the game that it's just really hard to just relearn all this stuff. And there's all these perk changes. There's just too much.
Yeah, and we could also do with like maybe less perks, make the ones that we do have like more interesting, but there's just a whole lot of stuff that, because I feel like every chapter is like there's one perk, maybe two that are like like maybe it's okay, and then like sometimes there's a perk like background player on release that was like, okay, we gotta kill this thing because holy shit. Yeah. And like with I never think DbD's like devs are gonna lose the passion for the game. I don't think that's ever gonna be the way that the game dies. I think it's either gonna be like the spaghetti code or just the licenses expenditures add up too much. But also like they make a lot of money from licenses. Like they have a really good relationship with Alien.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So, like, I do think the only way it would die is if they, out of the blue, just lose the passion for it. Which I don't really think is going to happen because BHVR as a company, it's kind of just DbD at this point. Like, if we're being realistic.
I have to say the other thing, too, is the game is simple. Like, for Killer, you kill the survivors, prevent as many gens from popping as possible. Survivors, you have to repair all the generators, open the gates, and escape. I feel one of the big things with DbD is the main premise of the game is extremely simple, but there's also just an abundance of content. So, I mean, there's obviously going to be killers that are going to be really good, and then there's going to be some killers that are going to be really bad. But it's just the game is extremely simple. The really good killers are going to have a much easier time playing the game. That's why they're S tier. Killers that are probably a little bit lackluster in terms of map mobility and anti-loop, I mean, it's going to be easier to deal those killers, and the objective of the game is just extremely simple. So I've thought like maybe we should be adding like maybe like a secondary objective. I think one of the big things that people kind of like really don't look at is the game is also just extremely simple in general.
Easy to get into, hard to master, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, exactly. Which, I mean, I like that, but it's just, there's just so much content in the game, and I don't really know what you could do about that, but it's just probably one of the biggest critiques I have about the game.
A little bit bloated at this point, yeah.
Exactly.
So now, my final question for you here is like, so you play the Singularity. Singularity is like your number one thing. It's your whole shtick, your whole shebang, your whole deal. What would be something that would make you drop Singularity completely, never play him again, maybe even quit Dead by Daylight?
I mean, realistically, Singularity is probably going to be a killer that I will almost always play just because I have such a strong passion for him. It's whatever behavior basically does to basically prevent killers from doing their objective. If it's something that's just so egregiously unfun to the point where it's like, why is it even like worth playing like killer at this point? I probably would just stop playing the game in general. Either that or I just lose interest in the game in general. Because there's like a lot of other games that I would probably rather play. I mean, as much as I love DbD in general, I feel like there's just going to come down to a point where killer just becomes so egregiously unfun to play that I just wouldn't really have like the ability. Like, I don't care whatever they do to Singularity. Like, they can literally remove both of his legs, and his only form of mobility would be able to crawl. I would probably still play him just because he's Singularity. It kind of just comes down to how like, the next steps behavior make in their changes in terms of like overall like gameplay health and balance.
Okay. But for the most part, you're not ditching the bio boy.
Oh no, I'm not going anywhere.
All right, and I hope DbD is the exact same way. I love this game, and I like seeing it succeed. Actually, so that's kind of all I have for this fine episode of Stars of the Fog for the Singularity. Now, this little next section, I'm just it's your spot to talk about all your stuff, all your links where people can find you if they want to see Jera Singularity. All your links, just anything you want to talk about, time is yours.
And again, thank you so much, horceror, for putting me on the spotlight for today.
Yeah, sure.
So Singularity, of course, is an extremely difficult killer to understand, but I recently started doing a YouTube channel at youtube.com/efcJera. I've been posting all my Singularity gameplay, and I go over basically how I play matches and stuff, and I'm going to continue posting Singularity content for as long as I play this game. Sometimes, very rarely, I will stream on Twitch over at twitch.tv/efcJera. I don't really stream as much anymore, but when I do get a better PC, I will be streaming probably a fair chunk more. And if you're always curious, it's like what I'm doing or such, you can always follow my Twitter at efcJera. So I always announce like whenever there's a new YouTube video or whenever I'm live. So you don't have to like constantly be checking. But other than that, I would just like to say thank you so much, horceror, for putting me on the spotlight for today. And if anyone has questions about Singularity in general, I'm more than happy to answer any comments. But yeah, that's all I got for today.
Again, thank you for coming on as a Singularity. I do appreciate it a lot.
It is my highest honor.
And to you, the viewer, I would like to say thank you for watching. Thank you for supporting me. Go check out Jera on all of these links. They're on your screen and in the description below, obviously. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. I know I'm supposed to say that. And I appreciate your being here. I appreciate your support. And I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, noon, morning, evening, night, whatever it may be for you. And I hope to catch you in the next one. So thank you for being here. I hope to catch you in the next one. So I will see you later. Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone.